There is almost nothing more exciting than raising a round of funding. It validates everything that you've been working towards and signals hope for a better future. However, the second you take on funding, the clock starts to plan and execute against everything that you promised your new investors. Let's go ahead and take a look at the fundraising and execution lifecycle. So I want to go through the steps that you would typically go through as a startup, going through the fundraising process, and then what happens directly after that. So here at LeanScale, we call this post-fundraising operations, the first things that you need to be doing the second you take on funding. So after your typical fundraising processes, you're going to go through a level of due diligence, where the investors are going to take a look at all of the details that you put in your proposals and make sure that everything you told them lines up with their expectations. They're going to take a look at your financials, they're going to take a look at your sales and marketing data. They're also going to dig really deep in your technology, just to make sure they didn't miss anything through the beginning of the process. After the due diligence process, you should receive something that's going to be helpful in the later stages of this life cycle. You should be getting a due diligence findings report. This will be everything that they found, areas of opportunity, some challenges you may be having, and ways that you can improve the business to meet the goals that you mutually have together. Once you have that findings report, you're going to start working on a financial model that aligns with the projections that you shared during the fundraising process. This is going to be a model that understands where to allocate capital, where you really want to start making your bets for growth, and what you need to do to invest in order to hit the projections that you shared. Now, this isn't always the case. You may be taking funding on more indexed towards building your technology roadmap. However, more often than not, there's a really strong growth component and growth expectation with the funding that you've brought on. And if you're taking on capital for growth, the next step, which is going to be absolutely crucial, is building a go-to-market operating plan that aligns with your financial model and aligns with the projections that you've given your investors. This part of the process is usually one of the most complex, misunderstood, and areas where people run into quite a few challenges. There are a lot of components to this, making sure that it aligns across the whole go-to-market lifecycle and aligns with the cost expectations in the financial model. Once you have a robust go-to-market operating plan, next is going to be executing against that plan, which will require hiring, investing in your marketing, closing deals with the sales team, and taking care of the customers that you onboard. When you're putting together your financial model, it's important at a high level to understand where you want to allocate that capital. Do you plan on heavily investing in the technology roadmap? Is a lot of the capital really reserved more for growth? And if it is reserved for growth, where in the go-to-market departments do you really need to invest in? Think about the amount you need to index towards marketing versus sales versus customer success and support. Are you expecting a lot of your leads to come from really strong demand generation? Or are you expecting an experienced sales team to go out and land those new logos? Once you've captured those logos, is it a high touch, low touch, or tech touch type of customer success model? And where do you really need to invest that capital? Is it making your product more user-friendly? Or is it getting highly experienced CSMs to take care of your accounts? Once you get to the go-to-market operating plan development phase, here's some of the major components that you're going to want to look at. And I'll go through some of the components underneath those and where you might run into some challenges or roadblocks. The first one, which sounds like it should be maybe the easiest one, but tends to be the most difficult, is aligning on the growth target and where that growth should be coming from. So you should be aligning on what your bookings goals are, what your expansion goals are, and how you're going to manage churn. You may have strategic reasons for growing at certain rates, and it's important to incorporate that strategy into the operating plan. So come up with a number that makes sense for you and the team and reverse engineer that plan from there. The next step in this is going to be building a demand generation plan. How do you anticipate getting the number of MELs, MQLs, SALs, and SQLs that are required to hit the bookings target or new logo acquisition target that you have. Which marketing channels are the most efficient for you, and where do you intend on allocating your capital across those channels? This is probably one of the most important components of the overall go-to-market plan. This is the leading indicator to hitting your overall growth goals, and the rest of the plan can be reactive to your demand generation. After your demand generation plan, you're going to want to build a sales capacity plan. Once that demand is generated, you're bringing in leads, you're booking meetings that are for the sales team, you're going to want to make sure you have enough people and capacity to turn those leads into closed deals and ensure that you have enough experienced people on the team to move those along to the next stage. So a big component of this is the hiring. So how many reps do you need within each segment of your business? But also a bigger component is understanding what type of quota can a rep carry, how many opportunities can a rep manage at one time, and what level of activities would you expect each rep to do on a daily, weekly, monthly basis. Understanding all of the activity components will be a major component of your overall sales capacity plan. Next, you're going to want to think about ramp time and when you need to have those people in seat to be ready to be productive. This is typically one of the biggest challenges startups run into when they're executing their hiring plan. If you wait too long, the ramp time will extend past when you need them to be productive, and it's likely you won't hit the growth plan that you aligned with at the beginning. After your sales capacity plan, understanding what you need in customer success. This could be a couple things. It could be the people that you need, but also could be the technology or roadmap components in your software that enable customers to be successful. It's very important to have a directional understanding of what this part of the plan is, but this is an area where you can be a little bit more reactive. As soon as you start to see the demand closing, you can begin to ramp up this part of your plan. You usually have a little bit of time and a little bit of heads up before you need to fully execute on this portion. Once you have all the plans in place, the biggest component of all of these plans is hiring and recruitment. How are you going to find the right people with the right background, get them onboarded, get them trained, and ensure that you get them successful in their roles? All of those questions are what need to be answered in this component of your plan. You also need to have a plan for retaining your top performers. The people who are the best performers at your company will typically have people trying to poach them, they will have lots of opportunities, and doing your best to make sure they stay on your mission is going to be key. In contrast to that, you'll also want to have a plan to performance manage your low performers. You need to make sure you have the right people in the right seats, and you're not holding a spot from a potential top performer with somebody who's just not a good fit for your company. Post-fundraising, these are typically the biggest challenges when you get to that go-to-market operating planning phase. So first is simply just aligning on targets and assumptions and understanding what the plan should be and where that growth is going to be coming from. A lot of your plan is going to be riddled with assumptions because you're doing new things. You're pushing the company into areas that the company has never gone before. So you're not going to have historical data for most of the initiatives you're planning on doing. Align on what those assumptions are, test the ones that are important, and if things change further from what you assumed, then you have an opportunity to adjust your plan in the future. The next typical challenge is having a high level of interconnectedness in the plan, making sure that marketing is connected to sales, connected to customer success, and is connected to your overall hiring and recruitment plan. If one of those components is not really working well with the other, it could have an impact across the entire plan. Another challenge is not hiring quick enough. The planning phases alone are going to take a long portion of time. And also, when you're recruiting top talent, they typically will need some time to leave their role and then come into your role. And it will take some time to convince them to leave whatever mission they're on to come join your company. So giving yourself a realistic expectation of what it's going to take to hire top talent, what it's going to cost to hire top talent, and making sure you begin executing that as soon as possible is going to be key. Related to that is the speed of planning and decision making. It's very difficult to execute against any of these components if you haven't aligned on the plan and you haven't made a decision, if you haven't made a decision on where to invest your marketing capital, you haven't made a decision on how the sales team will be designed with their territories, or you haven't made a decision on what type of talent you need and what those salary ratios are going to look like. Having speed in your planning and your decision making is going to help the entire process move along faster and ensure you even have a chance to execute against it. Companies who prove they can properly plan and execute against that plan will always have options for future investors and, most importantly, a strategic acquisition or an IPO. Companies who fail to build the ability to plan and execute against that plan ultimately are going to end up in situations where they may have to take down rounds just to keep the company alive, or have an acquisition that is really more of a fire sale rather than a strategic acquisition or going public. So if you do this well, it's likely that you'll have another big round of funding or successful exit in your future. And if you don't, well, let's just hope you don't have to worry about that.